Okay,
Oh,
okay,
some that, some.
all right. A dovetail joint in its simplest form is a simple pinch joint, okay? I think what happens with a lot of people, you tend to overthink the joint. It really isn't that complicated. Hello, Mr. Clutch.
They're still coming, I hate to tell you.
That's good, then I'll just stand here and we'll talk about some of it.
Dave Nichols got kind of windy, and that's why we're all.
Oh, yeah.
We were asking a lot of crazy questions.
Well, Dave, we call him Hurricane Dave. Yeah, he's got words of 70 words a minute, with gusts of 120. Did you bring the stitch kit, Dr. Bob?
Yeah, Dave was talking long.
He doesn't talk long.
That a long talk is wonderful to a new building.
Yeah, I mean, Dave's very knowledgeable. He was up at 306, third floor.
Yeah.
306. Now, during the course of my spiel here, if there is, don't be afraid to interrupt me. If you want to come up and see what I'm doing,
Can I ask a question for you?
certainly.
When do you build your cars?
I do build
Do
good
you,
cars.
do you build with a dovetail?
I do build with the dovetail.
Okay, that's all I wanted.
Yeah, I'm a dovetail. I'm also a authorized Martin. Oh, where at?
In New York?
Oh, cool. All right. Yeah, I'm down in Higgins, but yeah, authorized.
Where's it in New Jersey?
Higgins is Pennsylvania.
Oh,
When God sat down on the state of Pennsylvania, that's where it was. I'm pretty much dead center in the state. Mile marker is 112. Route 81 is 232 miles. So pretty close to the middle of the 81 line. If you go across, like from New York, you go across 80 and down 81.
Yeah.
Once you get on 81, you're about 40 minutes. I'm only about 6-7 miles off 81. So, you know, I'm close.
you live there too?
No,
You've been to my shop.
yeah, I live there.
No,
Hey, you
no.
go next to one.
No, he doesn't live there. I can live there.
Oh,
A couple of people here have been to my shop. Oh boy, somebody bought something. That's a problem.
Oh, great junction for that, huh? Yeah.
Alrighty, I'm going to get into basic dovetails. And again, if I'm saying something, you don't understand it, you want to see me doing it up here, holler, you're welcome to come up here. We have sharp implements and I got fresh blood. If anybody, was anybody in my compression fretting class 2 years ago? Remember what happened? We looked like we butchered pigs. Dave knew about it before I got back to the hall.
That shirt you're wearing is white back then, right?
That was fun. Okay, anytime it's something you need clarification, I am here to help you. Now, to make it really, really simple so that you understand what I was saying and my, as they would say in corporate America, my nomenclature. That's the block, okay? That's the neck, okay? That's the mortise, that's the neck. When I talk about the cheeks of the neck, that's it. That's going to be the cheeks of the tenon. I do not work in the neck block other than just to clean it up. So I do not make any neck adjustments in the block. If I have to make an adjustment, I will shim. The first thing I'm going to do, that's the side of the guitar, right? Whenever you're mating a joint, an inside corner is never sharp. There's always something there. So anything that can hold you off, you have to clear. So the first thing I'm going to do is put a chamfer on that joint. And the reason being, as this goes in here, you can bind up onto that corner, and you can sit there and adjust, and nothing's moving. So you have to be able to know that your mating surfaces are ready to work. Does that make sense to everybody?
So mating surfaces are what?
The joint. So that the tenon, eventually what's going to happen, the neck's coming in here, so there's the tenon. And that's going to be the mating surfaces. The critical point is this, that the lower 2/3 of the neck. I don't care about the tenon in here, all right? I want these joints to work. Okay, I wrote the word active. Dave acted fun. Angle, that's the first thing you're going to work on. Center line, second thing you're going to work on. Twist, that's the third thing. Elevation, drink beer. Okay? Now, what I'm talking about, when you're going to set a neck, we have to establish that the neck angle is correct. If you go into YouTube, preparing the rims, I have a video in there how I establish the neck angle into the rim so that when I put my neck on, I have a nice straight plane going to the sound hole. I don't have this, and I don't have this. I don't mind if I have a little bit down because the car's going to go up and down a little bit. I usually set about a 10,000th fall off. I mean, you do dovetails. A little fall off is fine. If you got a ski nose, you're screwed. Plain and simple. So you want to make sure that you get that plane established as well as you can. C.F. Martin was nice enough to donate this wonderful guitar. Unfortunately, I can't put it up for auction, but I can keep it. Okay, so the first thing I want to do, I want to put my neck, and I want to put it in tightly. You can, don't ever think you're going to go like that and get a good reading on what's happening in the neck. You really want to take it and you want to make it tight. You clamp it or you hammer it? Yeah, I'm a hammer.
I'll hammer it in a lot while I'm working,
Yeah.
but then when I'm getting close, when it's almost fit, then I start clamping.
When I
Because
start,
I don't want it to be, because I want it to be that last bit tight.
exactly.
Yeah.
In essence, this is what we call an interference fit. You want to get it that when you push it in as hard as you can almost get a business card under there, and then Superman's going to make it go the rest of the way. So you saw I clamped that in there. I know it's reasonable. I can't complain. So now I can actually take a look at my neck. And if you may or may not be able to see this, there is a slight little gap here, because this is a curve, and this is flat. Now, I generally set my necks before I finish my body, but they were nice enough to give me this, they don't do that. So we're going to do a little bit more relief on the heel so we close that joint up. All right. The first thing I'm going to do when I start is I'm going to remove, and I'm talking about this area here. All right? So here's the dovetail. Okay? And here's a fretful. I'm going to remove this inner part. I don't really need it, because when you think about what we're going to do, as long as you got 3 points of contact, you can lock it up. But actually, we want to do better than that. Does anybody have a pencil? Oh. Okay. So what I like to do on a virgin neck, I just take my finger, and I left about 1/8 of an inch, okay? What I'm going to do next is I'm going to actually kind of spoon this out. And how many use a chisel or a sanding block? Chisels? Does your chisel shave? If it doesn't shave, don't use it. If you can't sharpen a chisel that it shaves, there's a good chance you're going to cut yourself.
Mine's not old.
Huh?
Mine's not old.
You can also make a sanding stick. I mean, I actually do use both. For beginners, I'd recommend And there's no specific angle here. It just allows me to work an area. So we can go along a little bit, and you can see what I'm doing. Is there anybody here that doesn't know me? Poor bastard.
Do I want to?
Huh?
Do I want to?
Yeah. That easy to get along with. Okay, you can see you can see what I got there? Now I'm going to take my control. I don't tend to. We aren't going to do a kind of compression anymore. And you can see what I'm doing.
Are you angling the chisel in?
Yep. I'm hollowing this area out. And I'm kind of working opposite what I normally work, so I'm going to kind of look a little klutzy here.
Hey, watch out now.
Well, you notice I have
Last night, I said, hey,
Huh?
suit time.
Hey, John, if you move
The water bottle and the rat ears, this side, you can see it. Thank you.
Very, 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 very. Glad to oblige. Don't be afraid to interrupt, heckle, whatever. Here, I'll leave it here more. Come on, can you see better there now? Okay, so here's one technique with the chisel, all right? And here's how I do it with the sandpaper. Okay, so now you get to see the two different methods. So I've created a hollow, but I do have a little step right here, and I'm going to clean that out. Okay?
I use a little ball cutter on the end of a flex tool with a drone, and it works real quick too.
You can use whatever works for you. If you walk away with anything here, that you just walk away with a somewhat understanding of the mechanics of the joint. It is not a complicated joint, but people often overthink it. Now, Martin has some tape in here I gotta take out.
What is the angle of this joint?
Okay, the dovetail tenon and the mortise block this way is 19 degrees. All right? The tenon this way is 9 degrees. But I've seen them, different companies who use different angles. Guilds are probably about 5 degrees. So, you know, that isn't as important as the actual mating of the two. Martin has a new dovetail that they use instead of the bolt one, which is a slip-in joint, and that can drive you crazy because it just slides down. So now what you can see what's going to happen here, I'm going to break a piece of chalk here. Okay. Now by putting the chalk into the mating surface, can everybody see that? When you put your neck in, I want to put it in without, I don't want to hit the block. Right? And if I go looking for this, remind me that I have it hanging on the table. And when I tighten it in, I tighten it up. Right now, I mean, it's tight. I'm twisting it, and I'm looking to see if I can see movement here. I'm wiggling on it. So right now, it is a virgin joint, so it's basically AHT. Anybody not know what AHT is?
I don't know what it is. Let's have it, John.
Asshole. Okay, so now I can look, and you can see I got little bits of chalk here and little bits of chalk there. So I know that I have a good mate contact. I mean, I can feel that. So now I'm going to put it back together so you can see that you get a feel for how the joint lines up. Now I want to see what my neck angle is. Remember I told you, angle, center line, and twist. By the neck angle, I'm talking about the fret plane to the point of the saddle. The center line, I'm talking about the center line of the neck in relationship to the center line of the body. When I'm talking about twist, I am talking about the parallelism of the fret plane to the top. When you're making adjustments to the heel cheek, if you need to shim or do any adjustment to the dovetail, use tape for a shim. I think that's where a lot of people get screwed up, because all of a sudden things are getting loose and they start adjusting, they over-adjust. So at this point, we now can get into it. Now, you can't see it, but this is already jammed.
What kind of tape?
Masking tape. They just masked it off when you put the finish on. And what I'm going to do, if this were not clear, just at a 45-degree angle, all right? That's what you want to do. That way you know that inside corner is not going to interfere with your neck. All right? So now you're ready to set the neck. Any questions to this point? Okay. The perfect height at the point of the saddle with the fretboard on, you want at least 3/8 of an inch. When you're done setting the neck, I always like to see that my straight edge off of the fret plane at the point of the bridge is about a 1/16 of an inch above the bridge.
With frets
With frets. You know, if you don't have the frets on, you gotta be on top. The guy we were talking about is here now. Okay, so how can I know what my angle is? I am dealing with a long scale, 25 and 4. I'm going to put a piece of tape here.
John,
Okay.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but with the frets on the neck, you want the straight edge at the position of the bridge to be 1/16 above the saddle or 3/8 above the
Not
top?
above the saddle.
1/16 above the bridge.
Right.
3/8 above the top.
Right, at this point, there is no saddle involved. Okay, so how do I know where I'm at and where I'm at? So with my straight edge on right here for 25 and a half, and I can measure right here, coming off of the neck, I'm a hair over a quarter. I want to be 3/16 higher here, so a hair over a quarter, and I'm actually at 3/8. I'm almost perfect. All right, so I'm actually kind of happy with that. I mean, after all, this is a marked neck, but you will have to make adjustments. So if you had to make adjustments, for the sake of this discussion, you put equidistant hash marks on each side. And then if you need to roll the neck this way or this way, I always kind of work 0 to 1, 0 to 2, 0 to 3, or if it's from the top here, 5 to 4, 5 to 3, 5 to 2. But I never go all the way down or up in either direction until I know that my angle is correct. Now I'm looking at this, and with my bifocals, I have a little bit of a downturn on the fingerboard. Just not much. Okay? So I'm only concerned about the plane in the neck. I'm not worried about the plane in the front. So right now I'm reasonably content with this angle. My center line, you can use all kinds of crazy jigs, or you just go down here and lay your straight edge along the line of the fretboard, like this. All right? I can see the center line of my top here, and then you can measure and see how you're falling out. So if you measure from the center to the outside edge, I'm looking at about an inch, a little over 1.25 inches, and right at 1.25 inches. So if I want to, I can bring the neck a little bit towards me. I generally don't get too worked up as long as I'm within at least 16. Mr. Kovacic, do you agree?
Sorry?
Oh, okay. Take your nap. Anyway, so we want to establish center line. So in order to get this to roll one way or the other, you have to take consideration the whole shape. But remember this, from here to here, and then from here to here, or wherever you're measuring your point, it could be from here to here, which would be about an inch and an eighth, and here's 12, it's an almost a 10 to 1 move. So if you would have to move it to 16th, which is 60 thousandths, 6 thousandths will bring you in. So don't get too crazy. So in order to move that, you can use a chisel. Or you can scribe it in with a little bit of sandpaper. Now, what I like to do with the sandpaper, if you want to come up and see, there is a slight gap when you look really closely. And I want you, if you can't see it, so you can see how I get rid of it. We have a curve, and I want to take that curve and make that into the neck. So can you see there's a little, see that line here?
Oh, yeah.
Okay? And that's more because of the curvature here, and this is flat. All right? So I call this scribe sanding. You can call it whatever you want. And this is something I like to do when the neck has no fretboard on.
Flossing the cheeks.
Glossing the cheeks. You got it. You watch the movie. I also have this covered on YouTube, the neck joint addendum, or dovetail addendum. Okay, so now you'll be able to see just a few rubs because I relieved the wood from the material on the heel of the check, of the sheet. I am now getting that to come right down.
You were doing this in your shop, you probably pop, you have the fingerboard on with like double stick tape to get your angle.
No, I don't, if I'm in my shop, the fingerboard isn't even on, okay? Because I'm gonna measure this plane where the fingerboard is going to. This is kind of semi-finished. So I'll even talk about that. When you're building a guitar, build the body first, get your neck. That way you can measure right off the actual joint of the neck, and then you can sand this true. The point that I would want is at the point of the saddle, off of the fret plane or the joint plane would be 0.094 or 3/32. If I see a 16 to an 8, I consider that fine. All right? That you're within the ballpark. Anything to add?
3/32, that's what I go for, that's what I would say.
That's what I like to go for.
3/32 seconds if it's just the neck without a fretboard on it.
Right. Now, one thing that you really got to watch, and this is what can really throw you off, with a very good dovetail mate, you can put this in wrong, and it will bite. So you can see it's fit pretty well, but even you can probably see the gap that you can put in here. All right? Doesn't even touch. So you want to make sure when you put it in, you have that mated in, and then when you tighten it up, and that's another reason why I like the clamp. Okay, so the guys up here looked before, now see how tight that got with just a few rubs. Okay? All right? So,
So right now you're centering it.
Right.
And then you're gonna do something next, so you're not.
right, well, right there, we have the angle, we're doing the center line, then we're gonna check for twist, and then the elevation, that's when we're gonna drop it. So you can check this a number of ways, if it's on a longer stick. Because I generally like to measure down here at the tail block. There are different jigs for this. So now, 1 3/8. Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, 1 3/8. Inch and a half. So I gotta bring this to roll over. Now, that's actually pretty good. I should have brought a longer ruler. So, can you see the angle in the neck? But you can see the fall off at the fretboard. But up here, we're coming in with our angle. So I'm going to take another measurement, and that really shouldn't have changed from my initial one. And remember, a neck set is different than a reset. 3/8. Great. I have probably a strong 16th right now. I'll know better as I bring it down, and I'll check it again. So let's check for twist. When I'm looking at this, you can look at the gaps. Without the fretboard, you can lay two straight edges, one on the top, one on your fret plane here, and that'll stick out right away. So now we can drop this.
I can usually see that best if I'm looking from the head side.
Okay. So remember the chalk I told you about? From us working that, you can see how those joints are just so well made. So when I go to work this, I generally have a much heavier bench.
Can you put that body down, John? Can't-
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, see, I'm bench blind. Now I'll work up here. Can you see that? Yeah, maybe I gotta work this way. But you can see I'm peeling. I'm getting a nice peel. And if I did this, I always like to hold that against something. And I'm reading how the dust is coming up on sandpaper. Can you see the sandpaper getting carried? So if you don't have if you don't feel comfortable with the chisel, in fact, here, why don't you pass that around so people can see how it's made?
So what you're doing now is just dropping it down a little
Right.
bit more.
So all I'm doing now is working and thinning the tenon, removing material which allows the dovetail to drop. All right? And when you think about how little you got to take off, if you have an 18-degree angle this way, and for those of you, any math teacher, you know, if you think about how little you have to take off to come down to that level, it isn't that much. So don't overcut. A lot of little cuts are a lot better than one big one. And keep your fingers out of the way of the sharp stuff. Are you a clamper or a hammerer, Steve?
Hammer.
And again, so that you understand, you see how that gap is there. That's because that mates well. So you always want to make sure that's down. And when you put it in and you get it tight, I can see the joint's nice. Hear it rocking? Okay? It's rocking and it's tight at the bottom. So if it's tight at the bottom, that's where you got to remove the material. And so that you can see that, has anybody taken bets on whether I bleed or not?
No, we're just waiting
Looks
for
like
the light.
that.
What's that?
We'll tell you afterwards.
Whoever gets closest to going over, so we can't tell you.
Well, sometimes you go by how long it takes me or how many units of work I got. All right, with that little bit of chalk. And while it is an intimidating joint, if you understand the simplicity of it, it's a simple process.
Can the clamp, frets, as you're doing this clamping, I'm a new guy, can the clamp hurt the fret?
No.
No?
Because what I'm doing is when I'm putting the clamp on, that's a good question, I'm putting the clamp right over right over the dovetail block in the joint. So I'm not really stressing anything out here. And I can see I have a little bit of chalk here, and see the chalk there, and not much up here, so that's where I'm tight. So I can, for the, just go like this.
What grit sandpaper have you got on that stick?
80.
Maybe.
Yeah. Now I can put it in. I can feel that that little bit took a good bit off as far as the rock is concerned. But you saw how little I actually removed. And as you're clamping that in or hammering it in, you want to see it actually get tight. You know if you're in right, it's hitting that dovetail, it's pulling it in. You see how much I came down already? Just that little bit we took off, the fretboard, although it's going down, is almost touching the top. You can't twist it. I can't rock it. And now, that's the point where the bridge is. And I can measure off of this particular bridge, I have about 1/8, and I have about 1/16 to take off. When I'm done, I'll have 1/16 to be right where I'm at. And when I'm doing that, so you understand it, measure that gap, and then I measure the gap at the top of the bridge. Does that make sense to everybody?
And the difference between the two of them.
That is correct. Now, if we would have to twist the neck, you'd have to take, naturally, if you have to twist the neck, and this is more for a new build than if you're resetting the neck. So that's your top, right? If you see the neck doing this, and here is your dovetail, and you have to roll it this way, you'd have to take some off up here and some down here. If you get this coming in and you know that you're reasonably centered, you can set one side of the dovetail up as what I'm going to call, that's your locator. So you adjust that and you don't need to touch it anymore. And then you can do all of the elevation on the other side. So if you don't have to work both sides of the dovetail, why bother? So right now we know that's really, really good. I know that my center line is very reasonable. If you come up here and take a look at the rosette, and we can look at the corners of the rosette. Okay? You can see right where the corners are falling. Okay? This corner is probably a skosh more than the other corner. So I'll remove off of this tenon because that will slide the neck over. And the goal is to get those corners to line up on the rosette. All right? So in its simplest form, we've established the angle. Remember, your angle and center line, that's right there. That is the surface you're working for. The elevation and the parallel for the fingerboard plane, that is going to be in the joint. So don't touch the joint until you have to. I wish I could do them this fast. There, put that out of the way so you can watch me.
Thank you.
Never once did my finger leave my hand. Now, I'm not going to touch it. I'm not going to touch that anymore. I'll make all of my elevation adjustment over here. And so you can see what I'm doing. All right? And you do want a good chisel. There is no such thing as a cheap chisel is not a good chisel. Let's see. Can I work in a way that you can see it? Can you see me there pretty well? Do you see pass that around, so people can get to see, when you're working with a chisel, you want to see curls coming off. All right, if you don't get good curls, sharpen your chisel. What took you longer, Steve, learning how to sharpen a chisel or set a neck?
Oh, sharpening.
Huh?
Sharpening, by far,
Yeah.
by far.
I'm very lucky in that I was a machinist. I was also a meat cutter. I learned how to put edges on steel. The Tormex system is a good one. What do you use?
I used to torment.
Yep. What's that other one? Scary Sharp, where they use the glass and the sandpaper?
Work sharp.
Work Sharp?
I use that, it's okay.
If it works for you, use it.
I use whetstone
I love the Japanese whetstones. I also have a couple of oil stones. What I have about, well, you saw that pile, and I have 2 drawerfuls of chisels at home. When I'm down to my last chisel, my wife comes, she'll see me, because you see I have hairy legs. That leg will be shaved when I'm done. That's how I test. If it doesn't shave, it's not a chisel. Okay, who's grading me? Who's come up here to watch this? Okay? Want to see it? Okay. Well, we have a,
Height on the sides, your angle, and then your height. You got a little bit of a gap, you said, or a credit card, or
yeah, well,
a business card in there, is what you want?
right. You can see there's a little bit, can you see the downturn on the fretboard? Okay, you can see how
Slightly, slightly going down.
that's because of the frets in the fret wire, and they're springing it.
Okay.
A lot of times it's not uncommon, you can have a perfectly great dry fit neck, you put the fingerboard on and it's taking your neck up. If you knew that sucker was tight before, that's just because this is pulling it straight up, and that can release your neck. And it is all right, it's okay to shim a joint if you have to. This is I have a thickness sander, and you can pass that around. That's what I'll use for a piece of shim stuff.
between your point up there and your point down here, what is more?
Okay. He's asking to clarify my points of measurement.
John, do you make your near or divide?
No, I make it.
What's it?
That one's probably about 10. I'll make it like 10, 15, 20, 40. And I want to try to shim, like I said, I'm trying to establish that my locator side, I know that's where it belongs. So I'm making all of my other cuts on the other side. If you have to shim, you have to shim. It's not a big paper. Martin used to use that paper, remember?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they used almost like a construction paper
Yeah.
at times, but they also used hardwood shims. I've had necks off of vintage Martins that had never been off before, and there was a hardwood shim in the Dovetail.
Okay. Now, he's asking me, what am I measuring precisely? So you see the gap right here. Okay? And what do you have, about a 16th of an inch?
Or less.
Yeah. Okay, right here at that gap. So it's right about a 16th of an inch? Okay. So when I come up here at 25 and a half, okay, I want to be about 3/8 of an inch where I'm just about 3/8 of an inch. I can rock it back a little bit more. 3/8 of an inch is perfect. You can see right now, for this bridge, I'm a good healthy 16th yet. So if I have to rock it back a little bit more, I will. Because as you're coming down, now you can get accurately measure a little bit closer. Okay? Does that clarify for everybody? Now, since I think I can move that back a little bit, and if you have to move it back, so that you can see what I'm talking about, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, okay. sides. If you have to move this back a little bit, when I start removing material, if I have to move that, the scotch, whatever, I put the weight, and you can see I'm just slowly removing material. And you notice I'm working my finger up. See that? And I do the same thing on the other side. But you notice I never went up here. It doesn't take much. And now this was a side, so you can see how you would do it with sandpaper. One thing you have to be aware of when you're doing this, you want to keep the weight right over the tent. You don't want to rot. It's gone. It's starting to look like my shop now, Steve. Here's a rock. I'm tight on the tail. So you're seeing the two techniques, one with the chisel, one with the sanding block. Here. And I'm also twisting. Now, I also want you to see we're building a little lip here. That has to come off. And you notice where my hands are. If I slip, because I, the leg's fine. But I used to do stuff like that, and there's not one of us who does next setting that hasn't nicked ourselves at least once. And super glue will work. Probably the most I use super glue in my shop. So now I'm going to re-chalk my block so that you can see what's happening. This is hard to make fun. When I was at Martin, I was in, now I didn't work for Martin, I was in for training. And there was a guy there, remember Gary Linmore, Steve? Sure. They had me back in the corner at the steam pot working on necks. I learned how to steam necks. And Gary said, I gotta go to the bathroom. You'll be okay, I'll be right back. He wasn't gone 20 seconds. Anybody ever hear rattlesnake rattle? You don't have to hear one before to know when you hear one, what you're hearing. A D-18 came back because it was smashed from UPS. They threw it over the top of a workbench behind me and it came crashing down. Oh, they were, you can't do that? And they put me on a 2 dozen a day fine for the rest of my 2 weeks of training. I had to bring donuts. Milk was a bugger for that. Now, that little bit that I took off, who was up here to measure the height? You? You saw how little I took off. Come on, look. Because this is where beginners will mess up. They over-adjust. Look how much that came down already.
Yeah.
Okay? People come up and take a look. When I'm talking how little it takes to move a neck, you can go from great to an AFM like that.
So you said when you rattle, it's normally at the small end of the tendon.
No, when it rattles, what you do, you can see that's really
How
tight.
is something?
Right. Whenever it is tight, if it wiggles at the bottom, you're tight at the top. If you're tight, if it wiggles, okay? So wherever it wiggles, the other area is the tight spot. So you can see, all right? see how little that has to go. And now you're actually gonna see where this is gonna start straightening out from here. Almost on the top. One little bit of adjustment yet, and that would actually be ready then to be trimmed for the heel cap, sand the neck. And I do most of this when I'm building, when the neck is still raw. Martin's been grinding they've been putting the dovetails in the neck block since after the body's built. Do you know how long they've been doing that?
I don't know how long it's been going on, but it's at least, I would think it's gotta be going on 10 years now.
Yeah, in the old days, they would have a neck block, glue it in, do it just like this, and the guy would spend maybe 15 minutes setting a neck. Now the guy gets it, and he's just doing little finesse work. Oh, you know how hard that is to get out? Have you set a dovetail before? Was it that tight?
No, I had a rock. I couldn't get the rock out.
Okay. A lot of times when you get the rock out, what's happening is you're missing up the geometry between the neck tenon and the mortise. 99% of what's going to happen, that's where you're going to have trouble. Another thing you're going to go at is how many of these guys were working and you have a gap over here, and then you're working up here, but this gap doesn't change. A lot of times, that gap is there because you're tight over here. All right? I think without knowing, it took me a lot of, Steve knew, it took me a while until I really mastered setting it down. And that is one thing I think that threw me off more than anything. You also do not want to get you want the plane of the mating surfaces flat. If you get them rocky, and you can check that, for the end of the day, my hands. And what I'm talking about, if you get that rocky, or you see the chalk down here, if the chalk is down here in the heel, you're in trouble. It's got to be up here. What you're going to do when that dries in there, that's getting tight first. That's actually going to pull your neck in. So if you can't get it tight, like I had it, just stop and think about what's holding you off. Take a look at it with a light. Take a flashlight. You'll probably see these joints where they have this developing. And you have to be careful that that does happen. Now, probably one more adjustment, this puppy's going to be done. Now, who really has a lot of trouble with dovetail? Okay. Yours wasn't that bad, you just didn't take it to the end of it. You didn't get it there. Okay, well, come on up and just see how little bit we're going to take off. Whether you use the sanding block method or whether you use this, it doesn't take much. And that was my side, my locator side. See that chalk? See I'm coming back underneath it a little bit? Not much came off, did it? Make sure that's clean. And you do want it to be, when you put it in, you want it tight. Corners are lined up on the rosette pretty well. Now, I'm almost, yep, that's almost in. Okay. Is it still tight? doing the same technique. Just only now I'm kind of concentrating on the whole thing. Now, when you get to the final end, and you're just about totally done, if you have a little bit of flip here, you can floss it in. Do you have a question and look on your face?
No, I don't.
Are you just squinting?
Yeah, little squids.
Come on up.
No, I'm fine, thanks.
Okay. But you can see how little, it really does not take a lot to make a big change. I think that's just about done. Mr. Kavacha, would you grade me?
You want me to come and look at it?
Yeah.
You really want this job?
I try, okay,
Would you put a call on the back? I mean, my fear is that I would have these round,
You see my belt?
compression.
see my belt? Yeah, I generally cut a piece off.
Yeah, I mean, I would have these round crush points on the back.
No, it's good. It's good.
Okay, pass it around.
You're hired.
Thank you. Okay, so you saw in what? Where's the clock? Okay. It did not really take long. So if you can remember that acronym, angle, center line, twist, elevation, and bring a beer. Now, the only difference between a mortise and tenon and a dovetail is the elevation part. In my opinion, there's more work to do a bolt on a neck than there is a dovetail, because you got to drill all those holes and light them up. People who really mess up a dovetail, it's not because you can't do it, because you don't know how to do it. Dave Nichols, you helped me, Dave Musselwhite, Martin. Once it finally clicked in my noggin, it worked. So the YouTube video would be next set and then, right?
Done.
That's exactly what I just did now. Any questions? Okay, yours.
No, so this is for setting the neck, like you ever carve your own neck, so you
Yeah.
can play. You do classes for that as well, or do you have a video for that one?
Actually, I've got a whole set of jigs designed for carving necks. If you want to learn to carve a neck, and it is simple. For those that want to learn how to carve a neck, go down to Home Depot and buy some poplar. Poplar will work very similar to mahogany. It's not expensive. Buy enough for 3 or 4 necks. All right? The hardest part is cutting the dovetail. Now, without going out and buying a bunch of fancy jigs, this is how I used to make dovetail necks before I had all the toys.
Would this work for a man with an outside?
I don't see why not. It's the same geometry. Do you have a table saw? Okay, who here has table saws? Okay. This is your neck block, all right? 18 degrees. You need to make 2 pieces. 9 degrees. 9 degrees. All right? When you have your neck block and you have it squared, you actually mount little brads that come through here and you stick them on. All right? You got me? You take your table saw. That's your top. You set your blade, well, okay, right here what we're going to do is we're going to set your blade at 9 degrees. Have your fence set up. And with that, that will go through the table saw following this angle, and it makes this cut. All right? Then it goes on this side, and it makes that cut. So now you have, looking down from your neck, you have this. All right? Does that make sense to people? I'm not that good.
Hold on now.
Okay? Okay. Now, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to set the blade now at a 1.5 degree, or about a 1.5 degree angle, just a slight angle. Then you're going to lay this on its side, still keeping them 2 flickies in, and you're going to make a cut right here that's 1.5 degrees. And you now have a dovetail. All right? And that, you can do that when you get all your pop. So now you cut the dovetail. And to carve a neck, you'll get halfway through one, screw it up, then you're going to get 3/4 of the way through number 2, screw it up, and by the time you're done the third one, you're going to figure out what not to do. I do, if I have to carve, I'll go to my belt sander, put about a 60 grit piece of paper in there and wear garden gloves, because it will do stuff like that to you. And just, it's not hard.
So you're cutting that with the neck is facing up towards the ceiling as you slide it through the table saw.
No, if this would be my neck, that's my tenon. Here's my trick point. The first cut's going to go through, and that 9 degree angle is going to hold you at that, okay? The other side's going to do that, and then I'm going to go like this, and I'm going to cut flush at my tenon. Wayne Henderson taught me this trick. What he'll do with his neck block, he'll have his body built, right? Okay. Then you know what a sliding T-bevel is? Okay, so he puts a sliding T-bevel on here, he gets an angle, he'll take his neck block, or his neck blank, and he puts whatever angle he has to put on there, and then he goes through that procedure, and his neck, that's how he sets the neck.
Those angle and 1.5 or 2 degrees, have cut that first.
No?
No?
He does the tenon cut. Remember we put the 9 degree
Right.
ones on? He does that cut, I think about 5/8, 9/16 high. And then he puts it on the side to cut the outside part off at about 1.5 degrees. Remember I hollowed that out?
Right, so that's your little undercut, so that
That's his
only
undercut.
only the very edges of it make the body.
And that's how he figured out how to set a neck.
But this isn't cutting the neck block.
No. Well, he does that for cutting the neck block, and then he beats it out with a chisel. Of course, if you read his book, he gets out his pocket knife and does a little pocket knife.
Yeah.
All right? Questions?
So with a neck block, you stop the cut.
I use a router.
Well, I know you do.
Actually, I use a milling machine. Not everybody has a milling machine. You good?
What kind of mill do you have?
Me, I have an Enco mill drill. I mean, that does everything I need it to. If I'm looking at a bridge port, the one I got does everything. No questions?
Make sure it'll fit in your shop.
Huh?
I said, make sure it'll fit in your shop.
Oh, yeah, it will fit. I'll have to take the motor off. And, they only weigh like 3,500 pounds.
Been there, done that.
Yep.
Hey, how do you know how you said to make all your shim stock?
Yeah.
Like 64, 20. For the really thin, for like 10 thousandths, how do you fit this down that thin without trying to really just, do you tape it down, or do you have it on the same?
No, my belt sander, I can take it down to the paper.
It goes, you can, just use it.
Yeah, I have a wide belt sander.
And do you put it on any kind of backing board, or you just,
No,
it's that good?
I'm just going right
Yeah.
As long as the piece is long enough, right, it's got to be 1 centimeter.
I usually start with a 2-foot piece. You can also take plain curls and iron them flat. That works.
My wide belt, like if I try to take it more than 15 minutes,
What kind do you have?
it wouldn't matter.
Woodmaster. Yeah. Mine is actually an older grizzly.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you want to, what you might be able to do is just put that, just take a piece of double 6 tape and run it through that way.
I've used plain curls.
Yeah, plain curls work really well.
What about glue, if you use hot glue, type on?
On the neck joint, I'm a fish glue or hot hide glue guy. I will use tight bond, but I prefer, right now, I'm going through I like the fish glue. Hot hide glue, it depends on what you're working on. If you're working on a pre-war, yeah, definitely we'll be using hot hide glue. Modern build, I'll use fish glue. I don't mind using tight bond on a joint like that, because that's a mechanical joint, it's already locked up.
And when you have to do the reset, those things, heat, steam, fluid will come apart.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. In fact, John Arnold, I saw him post on a forum, when he steams out a neck, he all knows that you go down one fret, pull it and drill a hole. He'll only steam it for a minute and then pull it out and let it sit a little bit, do it again, and he keeps doing that, because as Steve can tell you or anybody, you can really blush up the finish, and since I've been doing that, I don't get near as much blush. And it seems to come out in about the same amount of time. You know, you're just waiting for the heat and the steam to penetrate the area.
Hey, John, does fish glue come apart as well as hot glue?
It takes a little bit more, but it will come apart nice. You know, it's similar, very
It's
similar.
just stick your fingers.
Oh, it does. Well, you use fish glue most of your life every time you lick an envelope. Okay? Anything else?
Here's a really dorky one. What gram strain type do you use?
192.
What sort of use the fish glue?
Huh?
Is there a gram strength for the fish glue?
There is. You can go to Norland. It's called Norland High Tack Fish Glue. And trust me, it holds. Now, it does take a little bit more clamping time, I think, than the hot high glue, but it does.
Do you have as much open time?
Oh, you got
Or you have more?
Oh, you got more.
Oh, cool.
You can use that for, in fact, I use that a lot when I'm doing the top and back on. Yeah, you got as much open time as you do with tight bond. And the nice thing is when you're gluing up braces and you have a gap, you know, hot water, work a little bit glue, and then just re-clamp it, you're golden. It is a drying glue, it's not a curing glue. Tight bond is a curing glue. Once it's cured, it's never glue again.
Right.
One of the other things about fish glue that I like in terms of its workability is its ability to, tight bond is difficult, at least in my experience, to spread in an even thin film. That is, it'll spread fairly evenly if you're being generous with the amount of glue. But if you want a real thin film, tight bond doesn't spread well. Fish glue will spread very well in a very thin layer and minimizes your squeeze out, which is good too, because fish glue is kind of difficult to clean up. It's not really, it's more difficult than hide. It doesn't clean up quite as cleanly or quickly. But you can really spread it nice and thin and
And what I like
minimize your
to do
squeeze out.
with fish glue when I use it, I will give it about maybe 5 minutes and I'll wipe it down with warm water. And in about 2 hours, I'll go with a toothbrush. If you take a soft toothbrush and warm water, and then you're usually pretty good. But yeah.
Does it gel like?
It doesn't gel quite like
It gets very rubbery, almost like rubber cement.
yeah.
It gets
I
very
call it-
gooey, sticky.
It boogifies.
That's exactly how it does.
It is. It's like, yeah, it's like.
You may use that term. First time I used that term, my wife said, "That's gross." Guys knew it. If I say, okay, group participation, I say Niagara Falls.
Slowly
Oh,
I
yeah.
Okay? My wife doesn't get that. All right.
I don't get it either.
You didn't watch the Three Stooges?
Borat, Costello.
And Abbott Costello. Abbott Costello. He also did that. It was a comedy sketch about, met a guy that, you have to look it up. On YouTube, Niagara Falls, Three Stooges. All right. Did anybody